Here are number 3 and 4. Number 3, name 2 events that shaped the lives. Now we're going to go to World War II generation, and so they're the ones who were born between 1925 and 1945. What would be 2 events that shaped their lives? And the second one, true or false? World War II generation prefers a straight line meeting approach. They like an agenda, they like to have it followed. Okay, let's see what you have on those. What do you have for 2 events that shaped their lives? Okay, Depression and Pearl Harbor, huge. How many of you have ever been to a World War generation person's house? Did they send any leftovers home with you, maybe? If they did, what would they come home in? Probably a Cool Whip container or a margarine container. They were kind of the original reuse, recycle generation. True or false, World War II generation prefers a straight line meeting approach. What was your guess on that? True. They like things organized. They like to have an agenda ahead of time. One of the things to think about, and you may have some World War II folks in your communities that you end up working with in the entrepreneurial projects, they are going to want to know exactly what you already know, exactly what you've already done, and then what is it exactly that you want them to do to help. And so they'll want to kind of have a little plan in place. That doesn't mean that they can't flex, but they like things organized and orderly. World War II generation spent time, of course, during World War II, Great Depression. Women entered the workforce. When men went to war, women took a lot of those jobs. And then when men came back from war, a lot of those women got displaced out of their jobs and went back to work in their homes. They're pretty focused on bare bones needs, and so they don't buy a lot of luxuries. And they probably, if they're your grandparents, they probably don't buy you a lot of luxuries either. They buy you things they think you need and that they want you to have. They were around for the introduction of antibiotics. Before that, if people got sick, they just died pretty automatically. And antibiotics really changed life as we knew it. And then hero worship was huge, but it was mostly military heroes and movie heroes. And that has changed a lot as we get to younger generations. Well, have you ever enjoyed sipping an A&W root beer? Okay, that came about during their lifetime. Crunching potato chips. Imagine life before chips. Eating Pez candies. Okay. Watching a movie in color. Always before it was in black and white. Writing with a ballpoint pen. And always before it was dip it in the ink and write and keep dipping. Anybody who's played with a slinky or silly putty? Well, a lot of people think those are newer than that, but they were invented during their time. And here are some pictures. I know they're a little harder to see, but kind of how kids dressed when they were, for example, showing calves for a beef show. And almost every day, schools would have a flag-raising ceremony, and people would say the Pledge of Allegiance outdoors. Some attributes of World War II generation: they have a tendency to save and pay cash. They prefer things that are made in the United States. They prefer brand names that they recognize, and they really don't like businesses that change their names. When banks change their names, that's not something that they appreciate. They like to know the history of a company. They'll ask you, what's the history of this project? What's the history of this grant? So it'll be important that you kind of know where it started and how it's come along. They look for value and quality. They want hassle-free transactions. And their view of entrepreneurship is that if you work hard enough, you can achieve anything. Now, different generations have different views, but that's basically the World War II generation view. Here's the straight line versus loop business. This seems to jump generations. And so what's interesting is it causes some young generations and some old generations to really connect nicely. Straight line generations like things organized and orderly, and they want a structure, and they want rules, and they want people to follow the rules. And loop generations, or circular generations, kind of like to think outside the box. They tend to be real creative. They like to cut through red tape. Baby boomers are very much loop generation, and I shouldn't say this on videotape, but as an advisor at a college, one of the things that I know is I'm very much a circular person, and so if there's a rule, I respect the rule, but I'm also always thinking about, would there be a better rule? Would there be a way to change this so it would be better for the students? And I know sometimes I probably create Maalox moments for other people that I teach with who are saying, couldn't we just leave the rules alone? But loop thinkers are always thinking about what would be another way to do it. A high percentage of entrepreneurs are loop thinkers. They're always thinking, what would be another product? What would be another invention? What would be another way that you could package this? And here's how it shakes out by generation. Matures tend to be loop thinkers. And then World War II and Generation X tend to be much more straight line. And so they get along real well with each other. Boomers and Generation Y tend to be more circular. And so a couple of ways this is applied. World War II generation were mostly the parents of boomers. So they made rules, and we said, why do we have to have those rules? Why do I have to have a curfew at 10 o'clock? I don't understand. And then boomers waited to have kids, and so most of boomers' kids are Generation Y. And so Generation Yers grew up, and I'll see if this is true for some of you, but kind of negotiating what the rules were. Kind of saying, you know, maybe we could do this, or I would recommend this. And when you get to school, if you have a boomer teacher, they're likely to say, well, maybe we could. And I don't know about your Generation X teacher back here. He looks to me like he'd be pretty flexible, but are you?
I'm pretty flexible. I like a lot linear, but I do my best.
Okay. Okay. Well, and as Generation Z comes in, you're going to love it because Generation Z is linear again. So going to be a really easy match then. The good thing is when you hang around with people who are a different style than you, it causes you to do some growing in the process.